I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, and possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, listener, for tuning into this episode of The Oracles with James Tyson. Today, I am bringing in a friend of mine, Samantha Mowat. Very, very interesting young lady from here and living up in central British Columbia, and has had the pleasure of being guided by various beings throughout her life. She is clairvoyant. She's a psychic. She does psychic readings, and that side of her has opened up, obviously, through her life. It's amazing that it's within the last several years that extraterrestrials and multidimensionals have come to be her primary focus. She has met Andromedens, Arcturians, black smoke entities, Coneheads, crystal beings, golden energy beings, greys, hybrids, invisible beings, Lyrans, Mantis, Pleiadians, Reptilians, all of the Reptilians, tan, green, gray, and black. Through her experiences, Samantha has found there to be a correlation between developing and maturing her own psychic abilities and the increased contact with these beings. In order to prove the validity of her energy work, the existence of energy beings such as angels, fairies, ETs, as well as parallel dimensions, past lives, and even life after death, science and metaphysical science need to be working hand in hand, because really they are two sources telling the exact same story, just from different perspectives. In our conversation today, we talk about being educated on craft. And if you are a experiencer, if you are a contactee, this may resonate with you, being actually taken up onto a craft and going to school and being educated. And she was educated on craft off and on until she was in her early 20s. We talk about high vibration beings, light beings, crystal light beings, higher vibration humanoid beings like Pleiadians, and low vibe like the black reptilian beings and the lower entities. We touch on star seeds, indigos, that kind of higher vibration being. We talk about her experience with what you almost describe men in black, these guys showing up and having a conversation with her. I can't remember if it was either on craft or off craft, but her run-in with people that were communicating with her in black suits or dark suits telepathically. And we talk a little bit about all the diversity of life that is in the universe and her contacts with them. Very, very interesting young lady. She is, as I say, from central British Columbia, where she's kind of dug in and trying to stay off grid, because as you can imagine, it gets a little bit overwhelming when every being in the universe wants to drop by for a coffee. And she has a family up there, and she'd like to keep them away from all the naysayers and other things that are going on in society that is away from where her vibration is going. Again, she is on a website, samanthamowat.ca. She does clairvoyant readings, psychic development training via YouTube. Again, you can go look her up on YouTube. And she does contactee guidance. So if you are a contactee, Samantha is definitely one that can walk you through and give you an idea of what you've experienced and what goes on from there. Let's welcome her in now, Samantha Mowat. Samantha, how are you?
I'm great, James. How are you?
I am well here on the lower left coast, and you're way up in central British Columbia in the snow. Mm-hmm. For what, another 6 or 7 months, you said?
Possibly. The universe keeps telling me that I'm moving at some point, so I'm kind of excited for that. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to our talk today.
Me too. I haven't had a chance to talk to you for a couple of years now. We were on Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was fascinating because I heard all about you. And it was my first opportunity to actually having a chat with you about things. And my listener knows that you are out there. You can be heard on a number of different podcasts. Also go to your website, samanthamowat.ca, and find out all the things that they can find out all the things that you do through the website. And we're going to touch base on a few of those. But one of the things that I'm really interested in is your first contact, let's say, with extraterrestrials. Take my listener through that, Samantha, if you would.
No problem, James. So for me, I have been someone who is very fortunate in the sense that I've had ET contact from the time I was in utero. I don't remember a lot of the stuff that happened in utero, but part of why I know I had contact during utero was when I got pregnant with my children. I had ETs and multidimensionals and angelic beings coming to assist me with my pregnancies, and it was around that time that I realized, well, if it's happening with me with my current children, clearly this is something that's been going on for multiple generations. Now, my earliest recollection of having ET contact actually was shortly after I was born. It was in the 1980s. It was kind of interesting in the sense that, well, I am a twin, and I'm a bit of an odd duck in the sense that I'm the twin that survived. My brother did not. And so when I was this fresh little baby, I was so mad at him because he had made the choice to assist me from craft as an extraterrestrial, and for me to stay down here because that would make it so that everything was better in his opinion. He perceived that it would make it so that our lives would be easier if I had more assistance on an ET level. And so one of my earliest memories is me being this angry, crying little baby, extremely frustrated. You know when babies cry to the point that their entire body goes red from screaming? Mm-hmm. It was like that. And my mom, I feel so bad for her when I look back on it now because she couldn't handle the crying baby. She put me down in the center of her bed, closed the door, and had to go walk away just to get a break. And I understand that. But she had no sooner closed the door and left the room to go into the living room that the energy started to shift in the room. Because I remember I was laying on my back, and I remember my little eyes trying to look up towards the ceiling and everything being quite blurry after a couple feet. And this being came in with me. And at first I couldn't see it, but I could feel the vibrational resonance of this being as it came into the room. You know when an entity comes into the room, how you can kind of discern the vibrational frequency that it's emitting? Like an angelic being always feels very love-based, very kind. Then a deceased person, if it's a family member, you can recognize that feeling that the family member gave when you saw them. Well, it was kind of like that, except this time it was an ET being. And at first I couldn't quite see it because it was in between phase. So when something is in between phase, that means that it's operating just outside of the vibrational frequency or visible light that most people are able to perceive. And even as a small child, I was more clairvoyantly inclined. And so even though this being was cloaked, having an energy wrapped around it, so that if my mother opened the door, she would see like a bit of a hazy outline similar to that of like heat waves on a road in the hot summer, but she would still be able to see through. I was much closer to this being, and so I could see the outline of this beautiful Andromedan being. It had very large black almond-shaped eyes that were glossy. It was bending down to look at me. It had a very slender frame, a long neck, very delicate bone structure. And when I looked at this being, it was singing to me telepathically. And, it's kind of interesting because it was leaning over my teeny little body. And, it was kind of fun because as he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, I remember just looking at his eyes and having this sense of calmness. Maybe it's like... It was kind of like that kind of crying sound that started to come over me because he was calming down the energy that was being emitted. And he assured me that everything was going to be all right. I was so angry because I had gone from somewhere where my body felt very comfortable to being this dense, intense energy planet, and my lungs were burning, so my parents smoked in the house like a lot of people did in the 80s. I was very mad about that. I was saying, nope, take me home. I don't want to do this. I'm not doing this contract. I'm done. And this being had essentially come up to me to heal the lungs. And so he placed his finger, or was it 2 fingers? I'm not positive, 1 or 2 fingers, gently down on my chest. My guides keep saying it's 1, so it must have been 1. And as he does so, these beautiful waves of energy are just flowing out of his body, down through his arm, into his hand, and into my chest. And as this energy starts to fill up my body, it fills me with this sense of love and comfort and feeling of safety. And it took away a lot of the pain that I was feeling in my chest, and it started to sing to me in an ET dialect. Now, the funny thing that a lot of people don't understand about ET dialects is their words aren't necessarily similar to ours. A lot of their communication is done in blocks of information. So imagine if I were to take a movie that you've never seen before and put the entire movie into your head. It was very similar to having that kind of experience done, yet feeling the effects of it lasting for quite a long period of time. And so when he was singing to me, it slowly put my little body to sleep. And even though I was feeling abandoned by my twin brother, I felt as though something in my heart knew that it was all right and that these beings were going to protect me and keep me safe and heal my body whenever it had issues going on. And so I don't remember this being leaving, but I do remember my eyes growing very, very heavy and falling asleep. And that was something they did quite a bit for me as I was growing up, was coming in to heal me. Now, it seems to go in waves when it comes to my ET contact. I'll go through periods where I see Andromedens quite a bit. Then I'll go through another period where I see humanoids quite a bit, and a different period where I'll see reptilians quite a bit. It really depends on what's going on in my life, because the vibrational frequency that I'm emitting better determines who it is that's interacting with me. Do you want me to just segue into another encounter I remember from my childhood, or would you like to interject?
I would like to ask a couple of questions just about what you just said there about how different ET beings come in at different portions of times in your life, or where you're going through a specific vibration or a resonance. Which would be the ones that come in when you were on a really positive, when you're on a life high?
So if I'm going through a wonderful energetic period, like let's say I'm not having any MyLab encounters, I'm not going through anything related to MK Ultra, I'm not going through anything really dense and hard on the body, and nothing in my normal day-to-day life, like nothing like, if you're going through something like a divorce, death of a family member, intense move, extreme stress, you're not going to have a lot of higher vibrational beings come to see you to a large capacity. You might see them once, but you're not going to see them frequently. But when I'm in a high vibrational state, I have light beings come to see me, crystalline beings, angelic beings, flower beings, which are a form of elemental and crystalline type energy. The higher vibrational humanoids do come to see me, who are very similar to us, but they don't have the same pollutant levels. It's almost like their technology is much more ahead of ours, and they tend to not want to deal with the humans that have a lot of their garbage coming forward. They want to deal with the ones who are working on their soul evolution and growth. And so when I've been in those periods of intense learning and wanting to really better myself, and clearing my karma, clearing a lot of the energies that were holding me back in the programming, then I have the higher vibrational Pleiadians and humanoids come to see me. It really depends on what I'm going through as to who is coming in most frequently.
Well, do you find certain ones come through when you're in a really low state? If so, who are they?
Yeah, actually, I have been making notes and patterns trying to figure out exactly what the system in place is. Now, some of the reptilians, not all of them, because some of the reptilians are very high vibrational, very loving, wonderful beings. But some of the black reptilians I've had problems with, because I'll get into periods where I have really intense negative hybridization experiences, or I'll have negative MyLab experiences, and that can put me into a bit of a depression. And so either when I'm astral projecting or even physical, like having physical encounters, I'll have some of the negative reptilians, or I'll have some of the negative grays coming forward, or I'll have more things like Djinn coming around, or lower vibrational entities. Like, how can I explain this? You know, when you have you forget to put up your energy protection for a couple weeks, you're just really feeling off, and then you start to notice a lot of spirits coming around who are just messing with your house, messing with your technology, stuff like that. I notice things like that happen as well if I'm in a lower dimensional or lower vibrational state.
Do you think that people that don't have the vibration that you have, don't operate or don't live with what you have to live with, a good chunk of the population out here do not, clean your house, do not fix things or work on the energy in their house and the protection of their house. Do you think their houses are just filled with these kind of things dragging them down, or do they really only key on the higher vibration people?
Well, I think that because the amount of humanity that is waking up, it's actually increasing the vibrational range in which most people are exposed to on a day-to-day basis. If we were to compare, say, the 1950s, where someone were to be born in one vibration and probably not grow much further than the vibration they're born at, that's a very small window for entities that would come to see them. So they may not have frequent encounters with these different types of beings. Whereas if we look at the last 20 or 30 years, it's very clear that humanity is going through an awakening, and that the amount of people incarnating even upon the planet are naturally coming in with a higher range of frequencies that they're able to access. And these people who are born with the natural frequency of beings they can access tend to have more different types of beings come to see them. If we look at, for instance, I'll circle around to your question in a moment, but this interrelates to it, I promise. If we look at the children that are born, say, in the 1950s compared to the children in the 60s versus the 80s versus the 2000 versus 2010, 2020, we can see that there's these huge leaps or jumps going on. And each generation seems to be more psychic than the last one. And because of that, these beings some of them are soul family coming in to assist. So if you are a starseed, you're going to have the various soul beings that you work with. Like, let's say you're from the Orion system, you will obviously have Orion beings come to see you. But because of that contact of these Orion beings come to see you, you may have some of the negative entities and negative dimensional beings who are like, oh, I see a beacon of light coming from that house, and it's from this child. I never felt the need to go to that house in San Francisco before, and I've been in this area for a couple hundred years. Why is there this pillar of light starting to come out? And it turns out it's this new person, or this person going through an awakening process. And so they will start tuning in to go see what this light is, what this new vibration is. A lot of people do have beings that pass through their home quite frequently. But as to whether these beings are choosing to stop, interact with the person, mess with the person, or even try to attach onto their auric system is another matter. So it's a little more complicated, I think, than people initially perceive. It's a very... Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly more complicated.
I agree.
Yeah, it is amazing what, and it's amazing that you have through your life, your short life actually, because you're an '80s kid and I'm one of those '50s kids. That you've actually have the gift or have had the time to go through and kind of start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And seeing it, and of course, I'm sure the puzzle is growing, and you're getting new pieces every day. But it's to look at that through your eyes is actually quite fascinating, Samantha.
Thanks, James. The reason why I have to look at this puzzle and these pieces is, one, because it's part of my life's agreement. I've agreed to make extraterrestrials, multidimensionals, and psychic abilities more of a normal facet for humanity, but also because the amount of encounters that I have, you get to a point when you have encounters, whether it's astral, physical, psychic, even energetic, where you're like, I need to figure out what's going on here. I need to understand why at some periods I'm bombarded with these type of encounters and these beings, whereas other times I've got these guys coming around. And so it's through my own investigation upon my own experiences and the experiences of my family members, both close family and extended family, that has allowed for me to really gain this kind of awareness.
Well, your gift or your path, you say, is to kind of help weave into, I shouldn't say weave in, I'm putting words in your mouth.
That's okay.
Kind of introduce us to the kind of understanding of an extraterrestrial presence, a multidimensional, and then grow other people's psychic abilities, probably, which will help them understand the whole ET and multidimensional thing. What is the difference between multidimensionals and extraterrestrials?
So an extraterrestrial being is often misinterpreted. So when people think of an extraterrestrial, they think of all the different beings, from the Reptilians to the Arcturians to the Coneheads to the angelic beings to the Greys, the hybrids, the Mantis, you name it. When in actuality, most of these beings are multidimensional. An extraterrestrial comes from this dimension, this frequency, but from a different planet or solar system, or a galaxy, and that would mean they're in our universe. Whereas the multidimensional beings, which is what actually the majority of these beings actually are coming from a different vibrational state, so a different dimension, a different universe, and they could be from anywhere in that universe, but they use a form of technology that doesn't cover just distance. It creates other wormholes or gateways between one dimension and the next. If we were to think of the Greys, and we think, okay, well, the Greys are from the Orion system, we have to take into consideration how long it would take for them to get from the Orion system to here, based upon their technology, when in actuality, most of these beings tend to have technology that takes them from one dimension to another. It kind of bends time and space in a way that we don't fully understand.
I was talking to a friend of mine from the UK, Steve Mara, who he and his research partner are doing something called Project Doorway.
Nice.
And what they're doing is they're actually studying the idea, as you say, an extraterrestrial going from the Orion belt to here through their technology, in a craft will take X amount of time, depending on how fast they can get going, where he believes more is moving through the vibrational resonances or the gravitational anomalies is, I think, more what he puts them, as opposed to a wormhole or a portal.
That's fun.
The lay term for me is portal. They come through portals. But you're saying that those multidimensionals aren't what we would... If we had a picture of a multidimensional, it wouldn't look like a Grey, or it wouldn't look like a Nordic.
Not quite. I think we're having some miscommunication. Okay. It's cool. I'm totally glad you asked this, because it's always good to verify. They can still look like Greys or Nordics or Reptilians or whatever, but what I'm saying is that they're just not from our universe. A lot of these are actually from a different universe that's close in frequency, typically, to ours, within a certain range that they can handle being in ours for at least a short period of time before they have to go to a vibration that's more compatible for their true form.
Oh, I gotcha. Now I'm with you. So
Perfect.
It's just a different... it is a different vibration, being of a different vibration, and using that gravitational... anomaly to travel, and coming here for what reason? Why are they all coming here?
Well, there's a number of reasons. I mean, there's so many reasons, actually. Some are here for helping of humanity, because some of them look at us and they're like, okay, well, we're going to help all the different species around the universe that are going through the awakening process. And they look at it because for some of them, they're healing their own karma. They're helping to make it so that because they haven't necessarily done good things to others in the past, like towards us, for instance, some of them help to seed humanity. Some of them are here because of hybridization. So the act of the mixing and creating of new species, or developed or changed species. So there's that aspect. Some are here for the meat markets, because humans are a resource just like cattle for some beings. Some of them are here for the evolution of their own consciousness and the expansion of that. So they're looking, like, look at some of the Mantis beings. A lot of them are connecting with humanity, one, because they do have some of their soul family incarnating as humans currently, but also because they're wanting to understand the complex emotional range that humans are emitting, because emotions are actually a very evolved and connected form. So when you actually are able to harness your emotions and harness that energy, you can use it for the creation, you can use it for manifestation, you can use it for as weaponry. There's all sorts of things you can use that emotional energy for. It's just a matter of being able to tap into that vibrational frequency. A lot of the gray beings are here because they're looking to expand their own species. They've actually cut emotions out, which has become a bit of a detrimental state for them. And so they're actually rebreeding with humanity, trying to create the right mixture of gray, human, and other beings to try to actually re-improve their own species on their evolutionary path, because it made it very difficult for them to breed in a healthy fashion.
Oh,
so,
Lord.
And some of the other beings do view us as food, unfortunately. So, I mean, it is very complex when we talk about the reason why these beings are coming here.
Okay, now you've got me with that whole meat market and viewing us as food thing. would they just come in and take a bunch of us out of a bus and move us off and eat us, or do they take us for breeding for food?
Depends on the group. Some of the reptilians that I've been in contact with have showed that their intentions are to come down here and take as much of humanity as they possibly can and sell them into meat markets. Some of them show they'll pick people off one by one, people that are hitchhiking, people that are not necessarily going to be missed, that are walking alone or in small groups, camping in the woods. They show all sorts of things like that to me. And I've been trying to discern whether that is a fear tactic that they're attempting to show me, or if it's a sign of respect and trying to show me these things because they're trying to educate me about the manner. I'm uncertain as to which it is, but that is something they have expressed on numerous occasions with various colors of reptilians.
See, and that's a challenge that I would give them too, because if they actually have meat markets somewhere and are taking people to fill the meat markets from Earth.
Not just Earth, but yes.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say they'd have to get them from somewhere else too, because there's not enough of us going missing daily to help out for to kind of soothe that appetite for I'm thinking of a reptilian being something, and I'm obviously thinking the biggest, strongest ones that would need to eat 1.5 people a day. So depending on how many of them there are. Getting into that negative side of ETs, and now kind of falling back on my lab, the military kind of coming in and saying, okay, you saying I've been abducted, or I had a ET contact, and the military coming in and basically wanting to interrogate you on who did it. That kind of overlaps on, there are negative ones out there, and we're trying to get more information on the ones that are having communication with everybody, just to see, okay, what did they ask you? What did you see? What are they talking about? What information did you get? Is that what you're kind of getting from the MyLab side of things?
My lab situations tend to be a bit more complicated than that of the standard person, because quite often I'll get put in either training ops, teaching positions. I've been in my lab since I was a child. And so when I was younger in elementary school, I was put through a lot of ops where it was training ops, learning about weaponry, learning how to use energy, learning how to discern what position your enemy's coming from, stuff like that. So quite often when I'm encountering my MyLab handlers now, they're not needing to be sitting me across from the table going, Samantha, what did you see? Tell us everything. Instead, they will sit down across me and be like, and they will use what is one of my trigger names. And so quite often for those of us who are MyLabs, we actually have fragmented aspects or fragmented personalities, because we do have a certain degree of mind control. It is beaten into you from a very young age, and your mind is split. Anyone who is a MyLab will have a lot of programming in them. And so I will have one sit across me. Quite often it will be either a woman or this one particular man that I've seen for years. And she'll be sitting across a table from me. It's a very stark room. It's fairly bright. There will normally be a soldier that's standing in the corner who doesn't speak, but he's looking at me the whole time. And it will be very calm and simple, like you and I are chatting right now. She'll ask me, who have you seen lately? What did they show you? Where are they from? What did you do? Were you on planet? Were you off planet? What kind of craft was it? It is not necessarily always interrogation in the way that people are perceiving it. But that is also because I am bloodline. I am someone who comes from a military family. I was born on a military base. I was born to parents in the military. And there's different components you have to take into consideration when you are talking to MyLabs, because there's a whole different range of what is encompassed under the MyLab aspect. And so when I'm encountering my MyLab handlers, sometimes I will encounter MyLab handlers and I'll have reptilians that are telling the MyLab personnel what to do. And the MyLab personnel don't often look at the reptilians. They will look to the floor, they will look off to the side, but they will not typically make eye contact, because they don't have the ranking and position to do so. And so it's different than what people are typically perceiving. It really is. It's not well talked about on YouTube or on most platforms, because it's a very dangerous thing for anyone to cover.
Oh, great. So now
we're
this
fine.
Whole recording is going to go away, which has happened before. I had a very interesting event in Los Angeles, where a gentleman who had got some photographic evidence from an ET and had a bunch of time missing. And he was in our booth, and he was getting a regression done. In the middle of the regression, the psychic ended up going into a seizure.
Oh.
When she came out of the seizure, well, we had to do some squeeze nerve points and stuff on our shoulders and her arm or something to get her out. But she came out of the seizure, and she said, yeah, that was creepy, because we had an ET step in basically saying, stop, you can't do this. And then another ET came in and saying, you have to leave her alone. It's not your space. You're not your place. So the two arguing ETs, a lower vibe one came in and affected her, basically put her into the seizure. And then she actually saw the higher vibe one come in and say, no, you can't leave her alone. He can know this stuff. So I interviewed him right after, and he was just bubbly. He was amazed at all the information that he could remember now. And we were watching the little meter on the recorder going. Yeah. It's fine. Nothing showed up on the recording.
Oh, I hate that. I've had YouTube videos do that, where I'll be sitting in my reading room making a YouTube video, and I'll go look at it after, I'm like, why is there no sound? Why is there no picture? Why is everything not working? It just depends on what you're talking about. I
keep looking at the meter here to make sure, both of our meters are going. So we should have both sides of the conversation. Sometimes I'll only get one side. I'll only get my side of the conversation. And it's always ET people. There was a fellow down in Mississippi. I've still got to call him back, because we did this before the new year. ET, abduction back in the 70s on the riverbank in Mississippi, down in Mississippi, and the entire conversation was only my side of the conversation. It's like, damn it, quit that.
Oh no.
Yeah, but it was very, very interesting. We're talking to Samantha Mowat. Please go to her website, Samantha Mowat, that's M-O-W-A-T, SamanthaMowat.ca. Samantha not only is an experiencer and has been, obviously, for many, many years. Okay, that's old.
That's all good.
She also gives you, if you are a contactee, she provides some guidance for that. She is a person to psychic development training. She can get a clairvoyant reading, too, from her, and a lot more. Samantha, and if you do this via Skype, do you?
I do some of it on Skype. I prefer the phone, because I find quite often, for some reason, when I do sessions on Skype, my internet drops and I can't connect, in which case I have to call them on the phone anyway. But if people are wanting to get more information about extraterrestrials, multidimensionals, their psychic abilities, how to connect with their guides, and psychic development, I do provide a lot of it for free on my YouTube channel. Just type in Samantha Mowat, it'll take you right there. It's just, they do want me to release a lot of information about how people can expand their own gifts, and I really don't. I'm not necessarily a big fan of having to teach people one-on-one, because I don't like for them having to pay for my time. I like for everyone to get as much for free as possible.
Me too. And people were always saying, well, you're doing psychic readings for people. You should charge them. And I said, well, okay. And I started charging them. It was $36 a year. So what it was is that if you liked it, you'd go to my Patreon account, which supports the podcast, and sign up for $3 a month.
Nice. I love that.
And that was it. And that also got you into a draw every month for a psychic reading, a past life regression, or an astrological chart.
That's perfect. I love that.
And if I finally someday ever get my 2,222 people, I'll be drawing once a month, and you'll get a trip for two.
Awesome. Why not?
To check off your metaphysical, parapsychological bucket list. If you like ghosts, we'll go to Gettysburg or the Queen Mary or any of those other woo-woo places that you've seen on TV, and we'll actually do a investigation with a local team. And I have a documentary film fellow here. We'll come down and film it for YouTube, and you get your own documentary. So that's the plan. And if you like UFOs, I'll send you to UFO conferences, the VIP package, hotel, accommodation, airfare, the whole bit, because I am retired and I really don't need a ton of money coming in, but I want to just keep giving it away and having people experience stuff, which would be just so much fun. And plus, I get to go with them, so I get to travel too.
Excuse to get out. Why not? We'll take it.
Exactly. A perfect excuse to get out. I remember talking to you a few years back, and I was absolutely amazed at your conversation. You kind of brought up that you had an experience with the Men in Black. Tell us a little bit about that. Actually, no, tell us everything about that.
Oh my God. So I've encountered a lot of different types of people in my experiences, some of which are a little more complicated than people understand. So when we're looking at Men in Black, I've realized now that these were an aspect of a different branch of my MyLab situations. How can I explain this nicely? Oh my God. Sorry, I was prepared for kid stuff, so I thought about in the last hour before you and I started speaking is all my childhood encounters. But
we'll get back to that.
It's all good.
The Men in Black thing just came into my head again.
That's okay. So one thing that I noticed when it comes to this aspect this was a couple of years ago. I found myself in my home. I, interestingly enough, was having what I thought was dinner with my family. And all of a sudden we heard what sounded like a helicopter over our house. I've been trying to figure out if I'm pretty sure this was a physical encounter. And what happened was I had these two guys that pulled up in a van in our driveway. It was a completely unmarked van. It was white. I remember being walked out with my family. And what's interesting is my German Shepherd, who would have been only like 1 or 2 at the time, she didn't bark. She just laid down. I don't know. That's completely unlike this dog. I mean, I've got way too many YouTube videos out there where my dog's going nuts over next to nothing. So clearly they did something to make it so the dog fell asleep. And I suspect it came from that helicopter. The next thing I recall about this situation was these men had taken us to this, how can I explain? I don't remember the drive. I don't remember how long we were gone, but I do remember being put in a room. And this was one of the few times where I can remember being interrogated by a man who was wearing a suit. Now, the men that were in this room, they were interesting. So I had one of the men who's known as, I call him the General, because he's not a large man. He's maybe only like 5'8", 5'9", like he doesn't look terribly bigger than me. He does have short hair. He does typically wear almost like this off-green type of suit. He looks like he's in his 60s. I remember seeing him in this encounter, and this was before I ended up going into this room. He was the one that walked me into this room and sat me down. And I do remember this man coming in afterwards who was wearing a black suit. Typically, when you see, when you're in a MyLab encounter, you will see a couple different types of uniforms. You will see military uniforms that don't typically have badges. They don't typically have insignia. They don't typically have, saying P. Andrews. They won't have anything like that, like little name tag, like I remember my parents having when I was a kid. They won't look necessarily as typical as what you'd expect. Sorry, I'm trying to remember every detail to help you when it comes to this. He did bring me into a small room, and this was one of the few instances where I remember having him standing directly in front of me, just staring at me while this other man came in. The man that came in gave me the creeps. The thing that I find really interesting about this encounter is he came in, he was very, very pale. He wasn't wearing military type clothes. He wasn't wearing tactical gear. He wasn't wearing, when you see ETs quite often, they'll be wearing this outfit where roughly only their hands and their neck and head are exposed, but the rest of their body's being covered. He wasn't wearing something like that. He was wearing a very nondescript suit. And I remember this man at one point standing in front of me, and I believe he sat down in front of me, and when he was speaking to me, it was all telepathic. None of it was verbal, and it was almost like he was pulling information out of my head rather than actually directly asking me the questions. That is part of the experience that I had with that. The thing that I did notice about this experience that I really did not like was when I went home, I had anxiety attacks for 2 weeks because I just couldn't handle the energy of what was around that situation. So that is the main thing I remember about that encounter. The man, I can't remember his face. I remember him having exceptionally light skin. It wasn't like albino white. It was closer to a porcelain or ivory color. So very light, not quite as light as snow type thing, but not really far off. Enough that he looked quite pale, though. I do remember him having almost either a dark hat on or dark hair. I can't remember which, because it's almost like my vision. You know when your vision goes out of focus and you just can't refocus it? It was like that, which is quite odd for someone like me, because as someone who's clairvoyant, I'm always looking at, what colors are coming out of somebody? What kind of energy are they having come through? And this man felt void of energy. He felt like all the life had been sucked out of him, if that makes any sense. Almost like he didn't have a true vibrational signature.
Interesting. Is he the first person you've ever met that was like that?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, wow. Did you ever have an experience with that type of thing at a bus stop in Vancouver?
Nope, because I don't take buses in Vancouver. I'll take a SkyTrain, but not buses.
Okay. No, I can't remember if I thought maybe he was talking to you about an experience with some men in black at on a bench or something in Vancouver at one point. Like a couple of years ago. Not where the conversation was a couple of years ago. That's why it's so fuzzy in my head. And it's
okay.
Not that I don't talk to a lot of people in between that.
You do.
And there's a bunch in there. Going back to your experiences as a teenager now, we kind of going up. Oh, and as a child, did you learn light language? I know it's a weird question, but I had to ask.
To the best of my knowledge, no. Most of the communication that they've done with me has been telepathic from a very young age. And so they don't tend to use dialects with me as often. Okay.
Because a friend of mine in Australia, she has had ET contact ever since she was in the crib. And,
nice.
That's where they taught her this weird language. And her name is Solreta Anteria, and she lives in Melbourne. And the Japanese film crew, a documentary came, picked her up, and took her to Italy. And put her with a lady in Italy who spoke light language and Italian, and stuck them both in a room, and they spoke light language, and they pulled them apart and interviewed them, and sure enough, they were talking about the same thing, but neither of them spoke each other's first language. So
I love
it's always been fascinating too. That just light language thing has been incredible, and that's where she learned it. I mean, she's probably like you. You could stand. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but she can stand out on a hill and call UFOs in.
Well, normally...
And so other people can see them, and then they leave.
I love that. Normally, if I go hiking in the woods, or if we're going camping, like when we went up to the Yukon, we saw a whole bunch of them type thing, which is fine. But if I'm going somewhere out in the woods where there's not tons of people, normally I end up seeing either beings peeking around trees, or I'll have them come up to me, or I'll have UFOs in the sky. That's completely normal when it comes to contactees and abductees. It's just part of what we go through.
That's so cool. I've got a peeking around the tree thing. Years ago, we had a availability. Like you speak to your spirit guides, right? You have guides with you?
Yes.
About in 2014, 2015, a lot of those guides in psychics from around the world took a step back. And when ET came in and took over. And it was a specific time period for about a year. And you had a choice. If when they showed up, you could say yes or no, but most people just accepted it, that this was a new guide, and it just happened to be ET. Well, we had the opportunity to sit and talk to one and ask, we called him Rob, and got some information on, basically ask him anything except anything to do with conspiracies like 9/11 and JFK and all that stuff.
That's fair.
I did slip in a couple of JFK things, and I got shut down. But he was talking about the Bigfoot. Now, you're a central British Columbian. You're a British Columbian, Pacific Northwest kind of person. So Sasquatch is, in
our backyard.
Is literally in our backyard. And if you could get them to clean the gutters, that's even greater because they're tall. But we got into an alien being called the Echo, EKKO. This is basically a being that I was told is the Bigfoot. We see the Sasquatch, we see peeking around a tree, and then when you go around the tree, it's gone. And it's doing that while the real critter family is booking it over the hill.
Behind you.
Behind me. So it's like going, hey, look over here. And because it's protecting that other being. Does that resonate with you at all in your experiences?
Yes, it does. It resonates quite well. One thing I've found when you do tend to go out in the woods is you'll end up, if you're someone who does encounter a lot of multidimensional beings, if you have like an elemental ahead of you, it could be getting your attention over here, so something else could be moving over there. Or you might notice that, hey, look, that squirrel looks like it's chittering away, and like it's looking at me, and like it's talking to me, it's getting my attention. And meanwhile, you could have something like a fawn walking behind you. Not like a human, or not, pardon me, human fawn, not like a deer fawn, but like a fawn more of like the small beings that tend to have like the furry legs and the more of a bipedal form, it's because from what they've explained to me at least, the dimensions seem to be blending as Earth is readjusting to a new vibration. And so a lot of these beings are becoming into our like physical sight, something we're seeing with our eyes rather than just our third eyes. So it's almost like we're shifting.
Interesting. I remember telling people this. As soon as I got into the quote unquote woo woo community, my hindsight kind of opened up a lot looking back, especially dealing with a psychic who pointed at all this stuff in my past that I had never told anybody. I in the mid '60s, as a little kid, I saw a gnome, like a garden.
Aww, nice.
Like with the red hat and the white beard and the blue coat, the whole bit. Like if you had to have a stereotypical one. And it was in the grass where the horse would stick its head through the fence, eating the grass on the outside of the fence. There was an area cleared about 2 feet wide, about 2 feet wide. And then there was taller grass, maybe a foot, 8 inches to a foot and higher. Yeah. And this thing was on the edge of the grass looking at the horses.
I love that.
I was looking at it thinking, I wonder why someone's put a garden gnome there. So I jumped this little ditch. I concentrated on the ditch. I jumped it because I wanted to go pet the horses, which didn't turn out well. But so I'm walking along, and I walked up to where the gnome was, and there was nothing there. And I looked at that gnome for about 10 minutes and thought, okay, that's weird. I definitely saw a gnome. But as a little kid back in the mid '60s, obviously I wasn't thinking of gnomes being real.
Of course not.
What the heck did I just see? But that was kind of awkward. Now, again, hindsight, because I can, and it's one of those memories I have that I can pull back. Imagine all the the 365 days a year of memories you have through decades. And that memory is one that is like in the Rolodex that pops up. I can picture the whole thing in my head. And it wasn't a story that I repeated over and over and over and over again to imprint that memory, but it is a very, very vivid memory. And it was funny because until lately, that memory was me going to pet horses. And, by the way, there was a gnome. But now it's the gnome is the memory more than the horses were. It's weird. It's like that has been, a switch came on to say, hey, just so you know, you did see something, and there's a reason you saw it at that time, and we're letting you now peek into all the things that you've come through in your life that add up to where you are now. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense to me. Actually, what I was thinking when you're talking about it is how amazing that with your awakening process and how you're really starting to release those almost like memories that were in your subconscious mind, they're coming to the surface to a much greater extent. It'd be fascinating if you write that one down, how many more come up to the surface now that one's been allowed to really come into your conscious mind, how many more you've suppressed.
Probably just the scary ones.
Well, I'm hoping it's the nice ones. Because, do you know what? When I was a kid, there were a couple sections where I didn't remember some of my nice ET encounters because some of the scary ones stood out a lot more than some of the nice ones. And as I started to get into things like yoga and meditation in my teenagehood, it really helped me to remember some of my other encounters, which made life a lot better because then I remembered, oh, goodness, okay, so yes, I may have seen these scary guys, but I've also still got these really nice beings coming to see me too. And so remembering the support system.
Yeah, the other thing too is well, you're a little bit different. You're a lot of bit different because your memory goes back
quite young,
within the womb. But for people who are kind of awakening in their teens and 20s and pulling stuff out of their memory, the scary stuff comes to the top first because that is fear based. Therefore, it is our kind of that primal life and death. We have to know this is bad in case it comes again and it could hurt us. So all the fluffy stuff gets pushed away. And we take the scary stuff and we put that into our quiver of learning. So we carry that with us a lot more. And it certainly overwhelms all the fluffy stuff. And it's going to the fair and having a wonderful day, but as you left, there was an accident on the road. And when you think about the day you spent at the fair, well, I remember that bad accident on the way home. But all the fluffy, nice smiles and laughter is blurred because the injury or the life and death situation is what you came away with.
Well, James, for people like your audience who are going through the awakening process, I would love it if they would just, go to the store, buy a journal. It doesn't have to be something fancy, just any journal. And what my guides had me do years ago, and they've recommended this to countless clients, is to write down every single experience that you had that stands out in your mind. So if you remember one time when you were a kid waking up and thinking that there was a being at the foot of your bed, but you can't remember seeing it, but you swear you felt something or you knew something was there, write that down. If you have periods of missing time, write that down. If you woke up or you had a premonition where you dreamt that you were going to see a car accident, or you dreamt that your friend was going to have something happen, or a family member, and then it came true later, write that down. Every time you accept something that you've either seen and suppressed or intuitively knew, you allow for yourself to access greater amounts of your experiences and your knowledge, things that you have tucked away into sections of your mind that are currently being repressed, and you're allowing that to come to the surface. What this does is when you encounter things from that point onwards, you have better memory retention, but you also allow yourself to have greater control when you encounter them. So if, for instance, by doing this, you allow yourself to recognize, okay, I do have some intuitive gifts. Great. Okay, so I have talked using my mind before with some of these beings. When you encounter a being in the future, be it in your astral state or in your physical state, you're better able to handle that situation and have more control within it, better deciding what you do and how you choose to react, which is a much better place of awareness to be coming from than purely from that, oh my goodness, I have no control, I'm a deer in the headlights. So it really does help you in a lot of ways.
That's fascinating. I'm always big on pushing journals. I have one. I carry it with me. When I was doing paranormal investigations, that was like, I didn't talk most of the time and try to shush everybody else up. But I would just make notes and draw pictures of what I was getting at the time. And I always really suggest that for anybody who is very conscious of being active within a dream, is to get up and just write. The next day, at least, even just point form on what you did in your dream.
Of course. I mean, that's beautiful. And from point form, expand upon it. So, go through the basic things that police officers do when they're investigating who, where, what, why, when, what was the weather, you name it. Every detail you can possibly think of, write it down, because it all is giving you clues and reference points for your memory to extract further information at a later date.
Yeah, and as my drill corporal used to say, it's the little things. So don't think just because it was a small little thing that you experienced that it's not important. It's the little things that eventually, every one of those is a piece of a larger puzzle.
I agree.
And just keep, make note of them. And you'll find that as they repeat over and over, you're going, oh, that's not as little as I thought it was. I keep seeing that large hairy thing in the bush, or I smell roses in my bedroom sometimes, those kind of things. You talk about in one of your, actually in your biography, that you had you have a way to manipulate energy.
A little bit, yeah.
To read it and to use it, obviously for good. How do you, first of all, how did you discover energy, and what is the energy you're talking about?
So how I came to learn about energy, or quote unquote discover it, was when I was a teenager. I was going to school on craft, and I was going at least a couple times a month, and I was always taken by the same humanoid beings. At the time, I didn't realize they were Pleiadians. I didn't realize that these humans were from somewhere else. I had made the assumption that they were my spirit guides. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s and asked them, are you my spirit guides? They're like, no, but we're helping you. I'm like, okay. Perfect. And then they explained who they were. But when I was growing up, they were teaching, I would find myself at this oval type table, and I was normally in a smaller group. So sometimes it would be one-on-one, and sometimes it'd be groups as big as 12. But normally we'd have one or two instructors, and it was always very calming, and the lighting was soft. And it was like we were sitting at this oval table quite often, or sometimes we'd be sitting on the floor and looking up at the energy floating in the air. And at first they would show us the different colors of energy, and they explained, okay, well, this kind of like this clarity of color means this density means that, this kind shows disease, this kind shows discord, this kind shows like higher vibrational, lower vibrational. And from there, they started to show us how the different colors interact with each other, and they explained that energy was all around us. They were the ones who started showing me about auras and how they are like emitted from not only plants to objects to people. And one thing that they started to show us from there was they would show us how to use our hands and how to use our minds to project conscious, almost like intention towards these energies that were around us. And they would show us how to use our minds and how to take that pink energy that's directly in like a cloud in front of us and how to get it to swirl, how to get it to blend with the blue, how to make it brighter, how to make it duller, how to see how there's that different use and how to change the different properties contained within it. That is what they started to show us how to do. And I remember being absolutely mesmerized by this. I didn't know when I was a teenager that this was energy I was seeing, because they weren't leaving the words energy in my mind. They started to give me that aspect of understanding. It was energy as I went towards my late teenagehood, going to like 18, 19. And then as I started to get into 20, I understood that was energy. But they showed how to make it into shapes. And from there, they pushed things like Reiki at me for learning. So they said that would be better for helping to verify what I was taught. Same with hands of light. A lot of things like quantum touch, just things to understand how to better feel the energy, because they were showing us more of the clairvoyant aspect. So that was wonderful. But even though I was in this craft, like this school-like setting on craft for years, it made it a little more challenging in some ways, because when I was seeing the energy moving from one state to another, when you're on craft, you're actually having an amplified clairvoyant or psychic experience, because when you're in the presence of people who are also psychic, whether they're earth people or ETs, your psychic abilities amplified because the vibrational frequency in the area is now taken to a higher level. Let's say you were hanging out by yourself, James, and let's say 3 people join you, and none of these people are empathic or psychic to any capacity. They don't see ghosts. They don't see anything. Your overall vibration, let's say you're emitting a 3 and they're emitting a 1, it will start to settle around a 2, and theirs will start to go to a little higher than their 1 point something. Whereas if you were now putting your other people who are emitting at least a 3, and then you have 2 instructors that are coming forward that are emitting a 5 or a 6, everyone's vibrational frequency raises, which then increases their psychic abilities, allowing for you to see more than you would generally see, perceive, and sense in your day-to-day life. And so when a lot of us go onto craft and we're wondering, why am I so telepathic on craft? Why can I create energy balls in my hand? Why can I get these downloads of information to a greater extent? It's because our abilities are being amplified by the beings that we're near, which is wonderful. But because I was going through this on craft, and because I was already going through my MyLab experiences, when the MyLab handlers started to realize that I was going to school on craft, they started to get me to, they were tricking me. And they tried to replicate the classroom that I was in. So when I was with the Pleiadians and I would see these beautiful cream-colored walls and things being very like minimalist, but also very love-based decor, in the sense that like I didn't see paintings on the walls, and I didn't see like lampshades on the lamps, and I didn't see lamps even, but everything felt like it was like everything in its place and everything just completely like serenity is a good way to put it. Whereas when I went into my MyLab handler situations, they were trying to mimic that environment. I would still have 1 or 2 instructors, and I would be in a classroom setting where it was like maybe 4 or 5 people, but the tables were wrong. They would have us at either metal tables or wooden tables, and the walls would still be gray, and the room would be cold, and the energy would be cold, and they were trying to get us to replicate what we were showing or being shown, and what we would show them on craft, and what we had learned, because they were tricking us, trying to make it so that they were that we thought we were in the same situation again.
Those little Dickens doing that for you.
So mean.
When you actually found out that, or when you sensed that you're being tricked, did you call them on it, or did you just kind of go along with it, not wanting to end up in MyLab jail or something?
I don't know if there's a MyLab jail per se, but, I didn't think to call them on it because I was trying to figure out for a while why there were these differences occurring. And once they got a lot of the information they needed anyways, they switched what program I was in and put me in a different one, because I stopped going to school on craft in that capacity around the age of 24.
When you say go on craft, okay, let's take my listener for a step back. How did you get on it?
That's a good question. Sometimes you will find, depending upon the beings, that a portal opens up in the side of your wall and a being will walk through and collect you. Other times an orb will come down through the house and it will expand and take your physical body into it and then take you up onto a craft. Other times you will find yourself literally waking up in the night and you will find yourself floating up off your bed going through the ceiling. Sometimes I'll find myself in the middle of the night, like about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I was walking down the stairs completely asleep, and I had felt the familiar hum of craft above my house. It's almost like this, like, how can I explain it? A vibration that goes like inconsistent, like, ooh, 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 type thing. Almost like it's like moving downwards, if that makes sense, like trying to subtly move. Yeah, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. And I was completely asleep walking out towards my sliding glass door, because normally they have me walk through the sliding glass door, when my dog licked my leg. And he woke me up. He took me out of that catatonic state. I walked back up to my bed, laid down, and a minute later found myself outside. It depends on the beings that are taking you as to how you find yourself going up onto craft. So there's a lot of ways.
Interesting, especially finding yourself outside in your gym jams and it's snowing. So.
Do you know what? I kid you not, like in September or October of this year, I was so mad at one of my encounters because I was about a block and a half away from my house. I was in a night dress and I'm like, I should not be standing right here on the road. Who put me back in the wrong spot? I was so mad.
I would be too, especially that time of year. At least it's not like middle of January in a blizzard. And,
thank goodness.
And your bare feet. Your dog would be really ticked with you, Samantha.
I was barefooted. My feet were dirty when I came home. I'm like, what is this? Because I woke up, like, again, the next time. Like, I woke up for a moment, found myself there, saw a UFO that was putting one of my neighbors back at this apartment building that's not too far from my house, and then went back into a catatonic state and woke up in my bed, and I looked at my feet. I'm like, yeah, my feet are dirty. That definitely happened. It was not pleasant. That's
crazy. We are talking to Samantha Mowat. Go to her website, samanthamowat.ca. Check her out on YouTube, Samantha Mowat, M-O-W-A-T, and an experiencer, a Claire everything, a manipulator of energy. Pleiadians. Mm-hmm. I happen to have a Pleiadian living in my house for a while.
Nice.
No, not nice.
Okay, not nice then.
She didn't know.
Aw.
She actually, we were talking to her. We had a clear. Oh man, she had dead people with her constantly, driving her crazy. One attached himself. We had to get that fella moved on. She opened a portal up in one of the rooms. We had to in July clear 9, not ghosts, but beings out of the room. A couple of ghosts. Actually, one was a dead relative of mine from the 1700s, which he died in the Atlantic Ocean. It was bizarre. Anyway, that's a whole episode. Actually, that's 2 episodes of my podcast is dealing with that. But yeah, we cleared all that out. But we were talking to her through the psychic. She was talking to her, said about these dreams she was having, and a location that she would go to, and she didn't know this was astral traveling. She just knew she'd wake up extremely tired. But what she remembered was a guy would come. And she would back out of her body, and this guy would take her to a place which it had restaurants and beaches and a beautiful ocean. It was a seafront area where everybody else seemed to know each other, and everyone was really, really happy. And she'd be there all night, hanging out and seeing all her friends and going to the beach and sunning herself and the whole bit, and then coming back and coming back through the window, in through the top of her body, and into her, and that was an hour or so later she'd wake up completely exhausted, and that was where she would go, but she had no concept of what astral traveling or anything like that was. She didn't know that's kind of what she was doing. When you're doing your Pleiadian side of things, have you ever been to a place similar to that at all? Or when you astral travel, where do you go?
Well, I've been to places both physically and astrally. It depends, because quite often when I'm before I actually get started on this, I need to say one thing. There's a lot of multidimensional species racism that I don't agree with. People think, oh, Pleiadian, all good. Well, no, they're just as complex as we are. Same with reptilians, same with all the other beings. So we do have to make that well known. So just because somebody says to you, oh, I'm a Pleiadian, don't assume it's in your best interest. Trust your intuition.
In fact, she didn't even know she was Pleiadian. It was pointed out to her. And she said, I have no idea what that means. And it wasn't like she was coming forward saying, hey, I'm a palmistry, I'm Pleiadian. No, she wasn't. She just like, it was being pointed out by a number of beings through a psychic.
And that's completely fine. One thing that I have to pour tea because I'm just getting over bronchitis, but one thing that I notice with my encounters is if I'm having a physical encounter, I tend to feel the craft either above the house before I go to bed, or I'll feel it throughout the day. Depends if I'm having a daytime encounter or a nighttime one. You normally feel the energy shift within a couple hours before it happens. Now, as to why that is, I think it's just because they're changing the density around your home, or around your tent if you're camping, or around your hotel room if you're in a hotel room. Whereas with my astral encounters, half the time I choose where I go, the other half the time I tend to get brought somewhere by somebody else. So, for instance, this one time I was astral projecting, and I all of a sudden found myself pulled onto this other planet in a different dimensional realm, or dimension, I guess. And what I thought was kind of weird, I'm like, okay, it's nighttime, I'm in a city. I'm like, I did not choose to be here. I was trying to go somewhere else. I was trying to talk to my spirit guides. Why am I pulled here? I walk out of this room. I'm walking towards a different one, and this man's in the room, and he stops me. He's like, you need to stop for a minute. I'm like, why? Because I put my hand towards the door handle. I was about to go outside. He's like, there's a man outside. He's looking for you. And he has me bend down, and he has this almost like little secret, almost like, how can I explain this? Like a little hole in the door so you can look outside and see what's going on. And it's in like the lower, like half of the door, maybe even lower third. And he points, like, see that man across the road? He's the one who's been asking for it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not staying here. When you're astral projecting, you can raise your light body up. You can fly out of the ceiling. You can go to a different planet just by thinking about it. That man who was across the road followed me to the next place I went to. And when he showed up, he wasn't cloaked anymore, and he was several feet away from me, and he was actually a black reptilian. And I looked at him, and the first thing I thought was, wow, this reptilian's absolutely beautiful. And he was actually decently kind to me. I've seen him several times now, but he wanted to talk to me. And that was why he had pulled me to the location that he was. He was expecting me to show up on the street or much closer, but he didn't quite sense where my energetic signature was when he had pulled me in my astral form to the building across the street from him. So he was trying to use his own energy to discern where it was that I was. Does that make any sense?
Does anything make any sense? Yeah, it does. What was his purpose of wanting to talk to you?
He was the one who actually took me to a reptilian world after that, and he was the one who showed me the meat markets and the fact that they have cars and the fact that they actually have kind of like a lot of their properties, like, you know how when you go to Spanish-style homes or you go to like the Middle East or something, how the entire yard has like a large fence keeping the road separate from the property? Mm-hmm. Well, he was explaining to me how on his planet, having plants was a sign of wealth. People or beings, I guess, who had a lot of abundance, a lot of wealth would have trees because you have so much water in such abundance that you can just let it be here for this plant for your visual enjoyment. You have enough water to bathe. You have enough water for everything you need. That, oh, look, I have so many plants because I have so much money type thing. And I'm like, okay. And he's told me that if I were to leave his side, that I would be in an incredible amount of danger, that on this planet, it was not safe for me to be stepping away from him. And he's actually pointing out, because he's sitting on the left side of the vehicle, I'm sitting on the right side because we're in the very back and something's driving us. And he's showing me how these are the different stores, and he's explaining, I'm like, oh, okay, well, can I eat anything here? And he's like, there's really not much you would enjoy eating because you don't eat meat. And I guess he knew that I'm vegetarian or vegan. And he was looking at me and he's pointing at the shops and he's like, see, and I'm seeing like rabbits and like body parts hanging, and it's like looking at a butcher shop. I'm like, oh God, that's disgusting. And he said, that is why you are not allowed to leave my side. I'm like, okay, I will not leave your side. And he took me to a meeting with a bunch of other beings who were discussing the meat trade.
Why do you think he brought you there for that?
That is a good question. I've been trying to discern that for a while. Most of the reptilians that I have met have actually been quite respectful towards me. There's only been a few that have been very rude. The reason that I suspect that he has brought me forward has something to do with who my soul is, on more of a diplomatic type nature. I don't mean that in an arrogant type way. I think it's just because I'm in contact with a lot of different types of beings, and the fact that quite often the information that I am seeing on Earth, I will be brought up onto large crafts, and they will take the things that I see, I hear, and I experience on a psychic level, and they will project that information up onto, it's almost like a giant UN type room, because they will take the energy and it holographically goes up to the center of this room. Think of like something the size of a stadium. And it's projecting upwards for them to all see, feel, and experience at the same time. I think it has something to do with that aspect.
Okay.
I'm not positive, though.
Do all reptilians eat humans?
I don't think all of them do. Some of them seem to enjoy more plant-based foods.
Okay. They enjoy more plant-based food, but, throw a human in every so often, it's not too bad?
Well, I mean...
Or have they grown away from eating other...
I would say
beings.
some of them have grown away from eating other sentient beings, but I mean, this is the same thing I tell my kids, like, if you eat meat, really, what right do you have to judge them for it? You eat cats and dogs and pigs. How is that any different than eating a dolphin, a human, or a bird? I mean, I'm sorry, but what's the difference?
Yeah, I talked to a couple of animal communicators.
Yeah.
It's my first question I have to them is like, so are you a vegan or vegetarian? And both of them said, no, we eat meat. Well, if you ever talked to a cow? And they said, yes, we've talked to cows. Mm-hmm. And they understand that they're food. But both of them say, but pigs, on the other hand, they're like the dolphins of the land. We shouldn't be eating pigs. They're extremely...
Sentient,
yeah. But chickens and cows are like they say like are wild, like have the same perception as wild game. If you were going to take me, I understand, but you have to use every piece of me, and respect and get it over with quick, because I know why I'm here and where I'm going to be going after this. So they have some knowledge of that, but pigs are something we shouldn't be going near.
It's actually the Pleiadians that I work with and the Andromedens that I work with that have told me that I'm not allowed to eat any animal products. And the first time I went vegetarian, I transitioned easily overnight after an encounter. I went vegan shortly thereafter. And then when I got pregnant, I started eating meat again, because that's what my first child craved, which was fine. Went back to being vegetarian with my second. But if you do want to work with some of these beings, they don't actually like the vibration of us when we have animal products in our body, because what you're eating, and I'm just coming at this from an energetic standpoint, ignoring the environmental, everything else aside, when you ingest an animal that has had terror in its lifetime, or it's having, like, let's say I'm about to go kill this pig, and it's knowing that it's going to die, and it's terrified, and it spent the entire life in a factory farm. Look at that vibration you're putting in your body. That is discordant. That is fear-based. You can't possibly connect your kundalini and your higher self when you have that much fear-based energy being ingested into your body, now circulating your physical form and your auric field. Good luck talking to your guides well when you have that in your body. They've also explained that I'm not allowed to have things like alcohol, not allowed to do things like drugs. They make it so my body doesn't need medications, stuff like that. All the things that would inhibit the vibration, they keep away from me. But
drink lots of water.
A lot of water, a lot of tea.
Yeah, that's the big thing that I'm finding. I get told all the time is just drink water, drink more water. So, okay, I'm watered out. Dang it, come on. The one of the interesting points of the diet connecting us to our energies and things is going back. I had this conversation with a number of people, and we were bouncing around. And this is, of course, coming after the animal communicators were saying, they if you're going to take the animal, understand it. And it gets back to what you say. It's that fear, growing up in fear. It's like that's why you don't chase the thing around the stockyard with a hammer in your hand. Mm-hmm. It's walking through the woods and boom, there's an arrow in it and it's dead. Completely different than, again, chasing it around. But you thank the animal. Mm-hmm. you thank it. And for thousands of years, we would thank the animal for giving itself to us, so we would move on. And then, Christianity comes along, and we move from thanking the animal to thanking God. So that was saying grace. So basically, you're thanking God for giving all the animals and the fruit and the vegetables and things, where back in the day, we would just thank them directly.
I agree.
So we threw a third person in. And we moved on. So it's kind of, it's funny, I was asking myself, well, is that to make us feel better? Or is that something that we were supposed to do? But I think when you actually bless the water you're going to drink, it's better for you.
Yes, it is.
You thank the elements for providing you with the plant. Yeah, because plants have feelings.
Yes, they do. I talk to plants a lot.
Just before you eat them.
Well, I do talk to my herbs and whatnot. I do play them classical music, and I do tell them what it is I'm going to be using them for. And there's always an exchange. You always have to have everything in perfect balance. Because I am an animal rights activist, I really do love animals. I made the choice not to eat them. And that's totally fine. I don't judge it. I mean, my husband eats meat. That's his choice. He still chooses to go hunting. I'm like, cool, you do you. I do me. And that's okay. But it's just a matter of, you also have to look at your vibrational frequency and what's going on. Because when you have a lot of time where you spend with things like angelic beings and light beings and crystal beings, and it's your job to communicate with these type of beings to get more clarity for other people, that way they can learn about their lives and get on their right path. I have found that having things like animal products in my system, having stimulants like sugar, caffeine, alcohol, stuff like that, actually throws off my ability to get a very good, clear read. And so I can understand why these beings said, no, we don't want you doing this.
And I've always found that if I was going to do readings, if I ate a lot of red meat beforehand, I don't get the reading. The same is if, you're out for a beer with the guys and someone says, hey, I got a friend here, could you do a reading? I said, no, I can't. Well, why not? Well, because
I'm drinking.
I'm drinking and so is she. So it's not like... And honestly, a lot of times I am getting something, like their guiding being is standing beside them, usually with their arms crossed, looking at me like...
like, come on, you could pass that message on, James. What are you doing?
Yeah, he says, oh, come on, or else like, come on, you can read, come on, or else like, no, you're not going to. So it's that reading the person with a scowling at me is like... Like, well, I get that a lot. Sometimes I'll see somebody and they'll have a being beside them, and the being is like, no, don't pretend I'm not here, because I have nothing to say to the person I'm with, and she doesn't really to know, or he doesn't need to know that I'm standing here. It's like, why are you showing me yourself? Oh, because I'm happy. Look at who I'm with. It's like, yeah, okay, fine. Maybe, I may bump into the same person a year later, and it'll happen. But at the time, is like, why are you here? And it's kind of funny. I agree. I could get myself thrown into a rubber room, but I could, it is funny to think about those things.
I think 50 years ago, we'd both be in rubber rooms, but I think that because humanity's awakening. I mean, even with my clients, I have doctors, lawyers, people that work for NASA. I mean, there's a lot of very scientifically and more conventionally educated people that are looking at these fields going, something in this is resonating. I'm going through an awakening process too, trying to look at the middle ground between the two worlds and seeing where the commonalities are.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And I keep looking back to, my awakening came... I guess I've been awake for a long time. It just got pointed out to me in 2012, which hit me right between the eyes when I went to see the psychic. And then things just over time have really progressed, with a couple of timeouts in between. But, there are people out there who are starting to open. And I look back at, believe it or not, the silly paranormal television shows. That for 10 or 15 years ago came out and showed people running around a house at night with full spectrum cameras and tape recorders, and every so often getting a voice on it. That became popular, and then that planted the seed in millions of people that there could be something after death.
But that was what was needed at the time. That was where humanity needed to go for our next step. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, think of where we're going to be in 200 years. This is incredible. What an exciting time to be alive.
Well, in 200 years, I will be that voice on the recorder. And there's that. See, because that's opened up the idea that, okay, there's life after death. Oh, by the way, there's psychics, too. And the psychics are getting involved in this, and people are now going, oh, so you're psychic? Oh, okay, I've always wanted to have that done. Well, before it was like, oh, you're psychic? Oh, yeah, you have to get locked up. Well, the psychics then morphed into, a psychic speaks to spirit guides. Well, what are spirit guides? Some of my spirit guides are ETs. My spirit guide that's still hanging around right now is Pan.
Nice.
He's a gohart.
I love Pan.
A gohart is the little half goat, half human Pan god, Greek god of the hillside.
Very similar to a faun.
Yeah, and that's who came in and is kind of checking things out right now, for looking after me for a bit now. I have another one. We were talking about your path and your contract. Let's talk a little bit about that. And the reason this is personal to me because I had a psychic say you have a guide that just came through. His name is Narith. You need to talk to him because you're off contract. And I thought, okay, I don't want to be off the contract, like I'm finished, because I haven't got my will made up. So I was kind of confused. I was a little bit worried that off contract and a finished contract might be the same thing.
No.
But she said, no, you're off contract. You have to talk to this guide, and this is how you need to communicate with him. And he is a very, very high vibration, so you have to ask for permission to talk to him. And I've tried a few times, and I'm just not getting through. But I need to have a discussion with this guy about being off contract and how to get back on it. And that's where I'm a little off path now, obviously. So her term for path and my term for contract kind of came together as being. And is that how you see it? We're on a path as we plan to come into this life, and your contract is. What we've been discussing is to the assistance of the awakening of other humans, basically, to what's going on.
To an extent. My original contract for this lifetime, so the one that I had when I first incarnated down here, was to normalize psychic abilities and to be here in more of a healing capacity as well as a teaching capacity. It didn't incorporate the extraterrestrial multidimensional aspect. It was focusing more on the spirit guide aspect and the angelic aspect. However, in 2013, early 2014, I believe, I was having an encounter, and it was an astral encounter where I was dealing with Andromedan beings as well as Archangel Michael, and I had this, so you often will have symbols that you will have that'll show you that you have ET craft or ET stuff coming around. So in this case, quite often if I have a dream where I'm seeing a yellow Volkswagen bug, I know it's a screen memory for a craft. Which sounds ridiculous, but for me, that's just one of them. And I look back in my childhood and I saw this occurring so many times. But anyway, so I saw Archangel Michael, and he told me that I had to come into this craft, change of plans. My contract was changing. And when that happened, everything in my life path and contracts changed. So my I was put from just one hybridization program into multiple hybridization programs. That's aware of. I went to now incorporating the extraterrestrial multidimensional component, having to normalize that as well. It changed my relationship contracts for this lifetime, as well as what it was I would be doing and where. Because quite often when you work with spirit guides as well as extraterrestrials and multidimensionals, they will tell you when you're coming up to periods of extreme, like major shifts, and they will warn you one way or another that you're having either new contracts coming into place or that you're off contract, as is in the case of you right now. I would be totally happy for you and I just to speak as friends and for me to talk to your guide and find out exactly what your contract is and what it is you need to do. I need it to be in the morning when I haven't had caffeine yet, and I've had caffeine today. Okay, so we'll do it soon.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
I think so. What my contract is I'm here to normalize psychic abilities, I have hybridization contracts. I have contracts to help to show the diversity of life in this universe. I have contracts in place to make it so that people are able to connect with spirit guides and angelic beings as well as elementals. I have contracts in place with having a certain amount of physical children and a certain amount of hybrid children, as well as to have certain relationships come into place for me in this lifetime. Those are the major ones that I have right now, as well as contracts to write about a dozen or so books.
How many books? Have you got any books out right now?
No, I've got one that's 2/3 done, but they have about a dozen that they want done.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they channel them for you, hopefully.
Yeah, which is nice.
Which, yeah, a friend of mine, after getting a good wonk in the head, she had sat down with a pencil and a pad and looked down at it once. And it was basically a letter from her mother in her mother's handwriting telling her about what was going on. She went, okay, beautiful. This is odd.
I love that.
Yeah. And my friend Akiane Krameric, an artist, paints these beautiful paintings. And she says it's just, she's basically sometimes just watching herself paint. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she's crazy good doing paintings. Which I can do, Samantha Mowat. Go to her website, samanthamowat.ca. Check out all the things that she can do for you and all the things that she does. And also check her out on YouTube. Please subscribe to her YouTube channel. Just Google Samantha Mowat YouTube. It'll get you there. Samantha, we're coming up to the end, and I got so much more to talk to you about. Really quickly, and this is something really quickly. This will take an hour. Do you have any events that you're coming to? Oh no, it's really hard for you because you're a mom and you can't really just bounce around piggly wherever you can.
Yeah.
Do you go to
this year I do, and this year's a nice break off. My guides informed me that this year is a lot of personal stuff happening for me. Probably one of the most turbulent personal years. They told me next year things are going back to where they're supposed to be, but this year is focusing on myself and family. So okay, I'm abiding by that.
Yeah, and I'm getting that. This is me getting weird things too. I'm getting that you. This is a recharging year.
Mm-hmm.
This is basic. It's turbulent. Challenges are put in our path to learn from, and this is a learning year,
which is exciting. I'll take
it. Yes, of course, because you know what the good thing about being who you are is you're coming out of it at the end okay. So it's like other people will walk in and go, oh my God, my house burnt down, and not that your house is going to burn down, but, or my goldfish died, I don't know what to do. Well, at least at the end of it, it's this is all for a reason, and everything's going to be twice as good when we're finished this.
So funny thing you say that. They did warn me that my house could burn down from a forest fire this year, depending upon how things go. And I do have a goldfish. That's where I'm going, oh no, I'd forget the goldfish. So that's funny.
Okay, so I shouldn't have said either of those things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that whole forest fire thing. I know. I was in August, a couple of years, 2017, in August, I was riding my motorcycle down from Vancouver, British Columbia to Portland, and then left turn eastbound to Sturgis, South Dakota. And it was smoky the entire route and about 100 degrees.
Ooh.
And when I got there, I went to my friend Seth and Brian, who lives down in Portland, and who was the first human being I spoke to. Because I was breathing in smoky air the whole way, my vocal cords were shrunk up. So I was talking like this. Seth, how are you? It's like, Seth, how are you? It's like, but it was bizarre that we're getting this much fire. But forests are made to burn. That's what they're supposed to do eventually. They're supposed to cleanse. Unfortunately, we humans, we love to be close to them and build our houses in the middle of them. So, make sure you have all your belongings in a nice fireproof location. Good. And same with the kids. Put little sprinklers on them, and that'll be good. And pay attention to the dog because he'll know when it's coming. It's a fascinating life. You have I almost called you Sam.
That's okay.
Samantha, and it's really very, very nice to talk to you again. And I'm definitely going to hit you up on the offer of checking my in with my spirit guide to find out what the heck's going on and where I am on my path. And I do also want to talk to you one day about the more of your clairvoyance and your psychic abilities and how that part of you works, how that works. But the ET side of things, my gosh, it's fantastic. And the information that you have it needs to get out there. It really does. And I'm not going to sleep tonight because I'm going to think I'm going to get eaten by a reptilian. But
no, please don't be afraid of that. Honestly, I wouldn't be afraid.
Oh, yeah, it's only those other billions of people that are being eaten. It's not you.
Well, you're not in one of the places that they said they were going to be harvesting from.
Oh,
so
okay. What? Like
I'm not worried.
Like
I will tell you off camera where they told us they are going, but I'm not telling you on.
Okay. Alrighty. That'll get everybody really excited. So if you want to know that from Samantha, you have to sign up for one of her court. No, I'm kidding. But again, go to Samantha's website, samanthamaowat.ca. Please Google her and check out the YouTube. Subscribe to her YouTube channel, Samantha Mowat, and hear what she has to say. She's a wonderful human being. And thanks a lot for coming out.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Let's be careful out there.
Run through the hail